All right, we are live on YouTube.
All right, I now call to order the Economic Development, Tourism and Events Commission Board meeting at 5:03 p.m. Will the clerk please take roll call?
Commissioner Warner. Sorry, you should be allowed to talk now. Commissioner Warner. She is present online.
Hello.
Hello, yes, are you present?
Yes.
Excellent. Commissioner Lean.
Present.
Commissioner Coggleton.
Present.
Commissioner Peck.
Present.
Commissioner Moorhead.
Present.
Commissioner Case has asked to be excused. And then ex officio Arlene Allen.
Present.
Awesome, thank you. We do have a quorum.
All right. Did anyone submit a public comment in advance?
No one submitted in advance, but we do have one attendee.
Okay. If there's anyone in actual or virtual attendance would like to speak, please raise your hand now. All right, then let's move on to our opening items and let's approve our consent agenda for October, approve the minutes for September 11th and our agenda for October 9th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, since we don't have any guest presentations today, we'll move on to our action agenda, which we don't have any action agenda today. Let's move on to our staff reports. And our first one will be by Ms. Sinclair, our community events update.
Hi, I'm Athen. I'm the Deputy City Clerk filling in today. I'm also the City Events Coordinator. So up next on the events docket, we have our trunk or treat happening Tuesday, October 31st. We have just 2 spots left for trunks, and that's even after expanding to add 6 spaces this year. So we are bigger than last year and just 2 more spots if you know anyone that wants to participate. And then in the winter, December 7th, we have Winterfest with the lighted parade. This year, we will be opening up the fire station bay to have vendors and snacks and beverages. Then we'll have Santa in there as well. We'll do the tree lighting with Mayor Hernandez at 5:30. And then the parade starts at 7. And then fireworks after that. And then we end the year. And then we start all over again.
All right. Now, did you see that poster there that it said October 30th? I just don't want anybody that is Zooming to get confused by that.
Yeah. Yep. So this is the incorrect version. Trunk or treat is Tuesday, October 31st, Halloween evening, 3 to 6 p.m. So this is the incorrect version.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And we do have correct ones down here if anybody needs one that have the correct date on them. And you said that there were 2 spots left for the,
Yeah, to be a booth or a trunk. Mhm.
okay. Okay. Are there any questions or comments?
Well, I have one. We also have a flyer for businesses that want to participate that aren't like in this parking lot. So tomorrow I'll run down to you, Kelly. So once again, on your side of College Avenue, if you could handle those businesses over there that want to participate. And then for South College Avenue, typically between 12th and 8th, Jeff over at Andy's Market has handled the south portion. Chloe, I don't know if you would be available to handle a portion from 8th to 4th. We can print them.
I should be able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. That sounds good. All right, if we don't have any other questions or comments on that, let's move on to our capital facility plan presented by Mr. Rizzatello.
Thank you. Ethan, if you could click on the booklet document. And then I'll try to go fast through this page by page. So just for the new members on this commission, every year we put out like a 6-year capital facility plan for investments and various infrastructure roadway projects. And we try to get recommendations from all of our advisory committees. And we rate projects based on high, medium, and low. High means that no matter what they'll happen. Medium is that dependent upon revenue conditions or grants they'll happen, and low means pretty much that unless we get a grant it'll happen, otherwise it will not happen. And the first year tends to be more solid than the following 5 years, which are more for planning purposes. So Ethan, if you could go to page 4. This page just details what is this capital facility plan and some of what we're dealing with. Major roadways such as College and Whitman, those are federally classified and those are predicated on traffic count and we can get grant money for that. The little local roads are not, and then we can't. So then we're dependent upon any revenue garnered inside the city, and just the inflation and the supply chain as usual have really had major impacts on the investments that are forecasted. Page 5. This first page here just details with some of the hallmark projects that are the ones that we're really focusing on next year. The wastewater treatment plant, we're under a State Department of Ecology permit requirement to start upgrading that. So the first phase of that next year is about $5 million. Lion's share of that's actually covered with a grant throughout this document just to show the success of the grants and getting developers to do projects here. About 59.4% of these investments would not happen if for grants or developers doing projects in town here. Other projects is Lions Park is finally going to move next year. So we're getting ready to bid that out this month, and they'll be about $6 million. And there is about 20 different grant sources covering that. So they'll be all through the spring and summer. And as part of that project, the farmers market next year will move temporarily to Kiwanis Park adjacent to Davis School. Right now we're in the process of putting in electrical and some additional infrastructure to facilitate that next summer. Southwest Majanier Road, that project we believe will start next year. We'll be assembling some right-of-way and then bidding out the project. And that's between College Avenue and Blueview, which is a little driveway on the west side that delineates our city limits. Stormwater, we're doing a decant facility, and that's a process of filtering stormwater. We're mandated to do by the state now, and previously we did not. So with this, we'll be engineering that facility. Lift station number 5, which we'll get to later on, we end up getting a lot of grant money to replace that, which was a dangerous staff, and you'll see a picture in a bit, but that project will be going on next year, as well as rebuilding Southwest First between Evans and Academy Way. And then drinking water well 7, this is an additional well, because even though we've been working on wells the last couple of years, that was only to replace the ones that have failed that served us a long time. And we have a lot of sources going into that. So if you go next slide. All of this is basically driven by our comprehensive plan. And then next slide. And then the strategic plan, which essentially goes over all of the various tenets the city council wants us to follow. And then this is for a 6-year cycle, and then it gets updated about every other year. Now, if you go to page 10. This is the capital facility process. So we start putting this thing together in August. And now that we're in October, we're presenting this before council, the advisory commissions, putting it on the website, and then teeing it up for later November, in which, as the citywide budget comes together, this gets to a final finish line, and then for adoption at the last council meeting in November. Next slide. These are completed projects. The council chambers is a big one we've been working on. Also sidewalk on 6th and 8th. That's now wrapping up. And then Autumn Meadows, getting that infrastructure towards up to public condition. We are working on that. And then finally finishing up the drinking water well replacement we've been working on the last couple of years at Whitman and Maple. Page 12, please. This pie chart just shows the delineation, the various functions that we're doing the capital investment. So the largest share ends up being a combination of wastewater, 33%, streets at 22%, and then this year parks at 19%. And then in general, you see a similar pattern as it goes to the 6th year, with the exception of streets taking the largest share at that point in time. Now page 13, please. And then you'll see that the estimated investment here is just shy of over $33 million. And then you can see the breakout between the various departments. And then page 14. And then this is the 6-year plan, again, taking into account all developments that want to come in here, and then various grant processes that we're working on. Page 15. This is the revenue that goes to essentially pay for it. As I mentioned earlier, just shy of 60% of this is contingent on development, and then also the grants. Page 16. Prioritization, this touches the high, medium, and low, and then this allows us flexibility. So as revenue goes up or down, we can essentially moderate it. This is why, like when we were going through COVID, we're the only city I'm aware of around here that didn't have to do like big layoffs or anything, because we actually had the latitude to move things around. Next page. And then this is a map of where all the projects are at. And then we'll go right into infrastructure, since that's what's out in the community by all the businesses. So if you could go to page 23, please. So first one is parks. Next, please. Big one is Lions Park. As good, we're finally getting the critical mass on this, and you'll see how all the finances split for this. So we're getting a splash pad. We'll have the first playground designed for children with disabilities in the valley that this is paying for. Picnic shelter, restroom. The fishing pond will be dredged with a natural stream bank along it. So we're removing the concrete that's falling into the pond, and then the softball field that's getting changed out with a multi-purpose field with a backstop. So that is going on next year. Next slide. Veterans Park, this is our newest park over at the Homestead. This park we actually got a grant for. So this will be going on over the next 2 years. Next year will mainly be engineering, but then we'll move to the capital investment. But we'll be adding a restroom out there, and then also a picnic shelter, basketball court, and a pickleball court out there. Next slide. Autumn Meadows Park, we ended up taking this over from the HOA. And in this case, we'll just be upgrading it to city park standards. So this one will have like a community garden, and then Park Board is currently involved in the design, but likely it'll end up being a 1/4 mile walking path around the perimeter, and we'll actually incorporate it with Perseverance Park, which is up on top of the hill. Next slide. Thanks. Whitman and Maple, this site is basically at the southwest corner of Whitman and Maple. And as I'm going over this, if you have any questions, please stop me. But I think it's important to educate the commission on all of this. And then as you're looking over it later, if you have any more questions, let me know, because we'll be asking for commission recommendation the following months here. This Whitman and Maple site, this is more so making lemonade from lemons. So when we put the new well in, the state mandated we have an emergency overflow into the creek on Whitman, so it encumbered the remaining property adjacent to it. So our park advisory board is working with the community and some park planners on potentially putting a bike pump track here with a pickleball court and a playground. So the design is currently going on now, but we're trying to position this for some grant dollars since regardless we're stuck with the site. So we're trying to make it an asset.
Mike,
Yeah.
where would the drainage be?
The drain, so there's as you can see in the picture, that little rock outcrop actually runs basically from south to north, right along Maple. So with the current design, they're actually working on trying to do like some features so you can safely cross over it, and then have a dirt bike pump track around it. Yep.
The red line designates the proposed park space. Is that
correct?
What happens with the rest of that lot?
So the aerial imagery on this, unfortunately, the newest imagery hasn't been released yet. It'll be released in about 3 months. But that south half of the property is where the new drinking water well is. And that's all fenced in. Yep.
So my question is, with the park on, I think it was Autumn, the one before this, and the one in Homestead, I know there's not really designated parking. And I know that at Homestead, there are streets on either side, but there's not really parking areas. So with these parks pulling in more people to do activities, is it up to the city to decide where they're parking, or is that going to be something that the HOA needs to decide? And with Autumn Park, I know that's a very steep hill, and then it's just a community. And I'm just wondering where people are parking to have access to this, because I could see that being potentially hard on the people that are living around these parks where people are parking in their driveway. And you can see in that picture right there, there's actually a yellow strip where you can't park. So my main question is there going to be parking somewhere for people in the community that want to come that might not live in these areas?
Yep. So for the Autumn Meadows Park, the designers currently work on that now. There's two options. Option one is really trying to sign like the areas along 12th Street up on top, because that street's actually way too wide for the amount for the traffic that goes through there. So road dialing a little bit with a rapid flashing beacon, and then some parallel street parking. That's option one. And then option two is part of us getting some of the land from the HOA when they passed the local improvement district to dissolve owning it. Area just south of Falbo Drive in Newgate on the map. Some of that is a creek, but then some of it just has like weeds and blackberry bushes on it. And our engineer actually mapped it out, and you actually could fit a couple of parking spots where the blackberry bushes are now. That's where we had the goats eating them this summer. So that is an option for Autumn Meadows Park. For Whitman and Maple, there's a couple options there. Maple Street, you have a water tank right on the other side, so people could park right on either side of the street because there is no uses over there. And then also there's some property just north of Whitman Drive where the property owner's open to potentially selling some of that for parking. So that there's some movement there. The one that is a bit of an issue is Veterans Park, just because it's like sandwiched between two roads. And we're going to try to have some discussions with the developer because they do own some land over, it's like the east side of Domes that they've just been sitting on. So maybe seeing if we could get some of that. That park was not the best designed park. I live right over there, so
I do as well.
Yeah, I can attest to it. Yeah, I'm right at Greeley and Homestead. So
yeah, we're on the backside of the park.
Oh.
And so I was just wondering where because people are already parking in a no parking area.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get around them with that street being more narrow. So that's what I was wondering about that one.
Yeah, the goal with the grant we received is to do engineering for how many spaces we could fit over on the east side of the Domes, and at least try to acquire some of that bottom part behind 4th to have some parking. Yep. Okay, next slide. Yeah, Kiwanis Park, this is going to be in a couple of increments, but next year, putting in the electrical, as I mentioned, to facilitate having farmers market there, since the SB moved out of Lions Park for the year, but then also our summer camp program is there. So really the electrical was needed in the first place. So it's fixing an issue. And then also re-roofing the gazebo, as well as fixing some sprinklers around the north area of the park that was not renovated when that park was rehabbed about 7 years ago. And then the 2027 work, that will involve trying to put lighting around the pickleball and basketball courts, because right now students are actually bringing mobile lights out there themselves at night, and then we're getting complaints from the neighbors because it's not really conducive. It's for doing plumbing work and such, so stuff that you could press a button and then it would be on a timer or so. So we'll be working towards that. Next slide. And then Harvest Meadows Park, this is across the highway in the Harvest Meadows subdivision, and then just trying to get to the same standard as our other parks. So welcome sign, picnic shelter, amenities like that, and that can be funded with our REIT 2 funds. Next slide. This one's more of a longer term thing. So that development across from the high school, that's going to be working through the planning process, but we believe over the next couple of years that could yield potentially about 400 homes on the Craig Christensen, formerly the Craig Christensen property. And then also the public school district acquired about 40 acres of land at the end of Teal Road. So with all that development going on, it's actually going to trigger the need for an additional park. And essentially you're left with a couple choices of, is it just the land donation, or does everyone try to work together and get the appropriate planning and amenities in on the first place? So basically the opposite of what happened at Veterans Park, because with Veterans Park, when that got given over to the city, when I got hired here, that even though it was originally presented to council about this full plan, only the property was given, and then we really had to play hardball with Haven Homes and get equipment on it, like what was originally shown in the proposals of council. So you can see here we're trying to plan with all the parties, so it's really a good substantial park for decades to come. But that developer Lakeside Group, they bought Craig Christensen's property, which is the back 2/3 of that property. It's bordered by Majania on the north, and then the stuff along College Avenue is owned by Mike McKiernan. But if you were to like map it out like 60 feet west of College Avenue, that's where this land starts, and that was bought by Lakeside Capital Group. So we'll be working through the planning process with them. That's more of a long-term project, but it's important to get it on the radar early. And then the next slide, 31, this one is starting to just cobble together. So federal Congress, they've actually changed how they give out grant money. It used to be that you went after competitive grant programs, and now half of it gets doled out that way. The other half is it's earmarks, but now they call it some different. It's congressionally directed spending, and you have to go to your federal senator and House representative and turn in projects, and then depending on how much they like it or don't like it, or it fits with their priorities, they'll submit it to a list, and then it goes before all of Congress, and then you can actually get direct grant appropriations now to do projects. This project we turned in just to see if it would go anywhere, because we're remodeling the park, but there really wasn't a plan for the building, and the building is up there in age. And through Senator Cantwell, we do have an earmark in place for about where it looks like it's going through for about $2.5 million. And then in addition to that, the Rural Library District, when the voters in town voted to annex in about 4 years ago, they had property adjacent to the high school that they were going to put a permanent facility at, but based on construction costs for Tushy, they realized that it was going to outstrip their ability to fund that anytime soon. So there's now a discussion of having a multi-purpose facility at Lions Park that would have 2 stories with a library up top with an elevator, and then downstairs community room like what's there now, but with a full-size commercial kitchen to support the farmers market, and then also a nonprofit that the state contracts with that offers childcare and build some rooms in for that. So believe it or not, it looks like this is actually starting to like come together with the various buckets of grant money. So that is the concept to replace the community center that with something that really represents the current needs. Next slide. And then this map, any of the streets colored purple, green, or yellow is federally classified, which means we can get grant money, and all the grayed out ones mean it's really just with the limited gas tax we get, and then some real estate excise tax that we earmark locally for street preservation. Next slide. Then full corridor projects, this means the pavement's getting redone as well as the base, as well as a utility or two. Next slide. Majanier Road, this is going to be the big heavy lift. And this one will be over the next 2 years. We're getting close to final engineering. We'll be teeing this up for right-of-way acquisition next year and to bid out construction. This will include normal travel lanes, curb and gutter, bike lanes, sidewalks, and some street lamps. And then we're using some tax increment finance money, a surface transportation grant, and then tying into the congressionally directed spending I mentioned earlier, we did get about $2.5 million earmarked from Representative McMorris Rogers. So that'll come together over the next year or two. Next slide. Then Cedar Avenue, this would be positioned for 2026, and new pavement and a new storm infrastructure, because we have a creek that runs through that, but doesn't really have treatment, and we're trying to play catch up with our storm. For decades, we did not have a stormwater permit to do treatment on outfalls and storm sewers and such. And about 4 years ago, the state submitted a letter to us and said we needed to step it up, and now we're playing catch up for a couple decades of not playing in that paradigm. So Cedar Avenue, that's an example of that. To fix Military Springs, we have some flooding up there because that's a little stream that originates underneath the town center and then flows this way. Next slide. And then as we get done with Majanier, the next road we're going to try to position is 12th, College of Larch, and we're going to be putting in for grants and saving money and such to redo the infrastructure underneath and make it more affordable. We're doing it in 2 phases. One phase would be between College and Larch, and by the time we have the money fully saved, but it could be bumped up based on how successful the grants, but just out of pessimism, putting around 2027, 2028. And that will include putting in new infrastructure underneath, some sidewalks and ADA ramps, and then street lamps as well. Next slide. And then 12th, the other portion, Larch to Myra Road. This would be toward the end of the decade. And what drives the high cost on this is in the Garrison Creek Heights development. When they developed that in the 90s, some of the wastewater lines that serve that subdivision actually go behind the fence and through people's backyards. So trying to fix that. So it's actually in public right away. Next slide. And then Dewey Drive, this is a local road, so fixing some of the water and wastewater systems and getting that up to current standard. And then next slide. Storm projects. Now, as we get into these other categories, this is dealing with the individual utility and not holistically. And a lot of that is based on the other conditions of infrastructure underneath roads or facilities are good, but it's just the one utility that has some issues. Next slide. Decant facility. This need is predicated on our permit requirements from the state. So this equipment filters out contaminants from leaves and stuff picked up by the street sweeper. Luckily with the stormwater, well, a lot of stormwater projects, we do qualify for hardship grants. So that makes it a little easier to do stormwater awards. So Decant facility, we're positioning that for the next couple of years. Next slide. Then Birch from 4th to 6th, engineering, we need to handle that, and then getting to construction and putting sidewalk on that roadway as well. And then dealing with some of the stormwater issues because we have a creek that goes through folks' backyards and isn't properly mitigated at that roadway. Next slide. And then the dry wells, we did a study. It was funded by a state grant a couple of years ago. It said the water around the College Avenue corridor could be treated by dry wells and just pumped directly into the ground. So basically every other year we look at putting a certain percentage of dry wells in the area between Birch as well as Bade, and then from about Whitman all the way down to Sunny. So we'll work on getting that list whittled down. Next slide. And then Public Works Yard, the stormwater, and this ties with Birch Street. This just needs to be treated. A lot of our heavy equipment is back there. So again, positioning this for next year to begin and remediate it. Next slide. And then Northwest Earl Lane, a couple of years ago, we redid Destido Lane off of B Street, and we thought it was going to mitigate stormwater. However, we realized that a lot of stormwater is also coming from Earl, so this needs to be mitigated as well. And as you can see, we're getting a lot of grants for this project. Next slide. And then 10th Street from College to Bade. This is another one where street sheet drains directly into Garrison Creek without any treatment. So this would put curb and gutter and a sidewalk in there. So we already got an engineering grant for this, but we're trying to get money for construction. Next slide. This project I'm excited about. We ended up getting a grant from the U.S. Forest Service for about $730,000 to put new trees and sprinklers and irrigation along the new Majania Road project. Knock on wood, if the Martin Airfield area annexes tomorrow night, Whitman Drive that way would become ours. So this grant would pay to put trees along the multi-use path because right now it's barren. And then also along 12th and then the new east-west road near the high school. So this is all grant from U.S. Forest Service. Next slide. And then the outfall, we have roughly about 80 outfalls across the city, and we're trying to get one every other year treated because the 80 outfalls didn't have filters on them, and they should have. So now we have a permit. We're trying to whittle that down every year, but they're expensive. Each outfall's $250,000 to remediate. Next slide. And then Dade Avenue, another area where we have stormwater pooling. So this would essentially touch and fix the stormwater system at the Garrison Creek crossing. This would be 2028, and the utility would pay for that. Next. Now, street projects. This is mainly just dealing with pavement. Next slide. So chip seal, we put the rocky material on the roads, and we partner with the county to do this because we're able to get another 10 years of life out of them. We've done this as a stopgap because since we didn't really have a funding mechanism for streets, at least the local ones, they were at like a 260-year replacement schedule. So you do what you can to keep it going. So for 2024, you can see we would chip seal Auto Meadows, Country Estates, south area of town. 2025 would be Highland Park area, and then Destido and Southwest 12th, Maple and Scenic View. 2026 would be Northeast C Street from Larch to Myra, the totality of the Larch corridor, and then Southwest 7th and 9th, and then Bathing Evans. And then 2027 would be Sunset Villa, the manufactured housing park up there, and then Southeast Ash from Whitman 4th and Davis from 6th to 8th. And that's funded by our real estate excise tax 1. Next slide. And then this block resurfacing program, and this one is predicated on a transportation benefit district revenue. We've had an unfunded one for a number of years. This, if it did pass, would be a 1/10 of 1% sales tax, which is less than Wall's 0.2%. But in this case, we would then start to actually whittle down some of these local roads that we're in problems replacing and fixing. So you can see that in the cycle here, we have it where we have 1 or 2 blocks of streets we would reconstruct, and then another 1 or 2 blocks of streets we would engineer for the following year, and then essentially keep going in that fashion. And you can see the estimated breakdown, and that's completed by a pavement management report that was done earlier in the year. Next slide. And then Safe Walk College Place. This is the initiative to try to get sidewalks in the areas of town that have no sidewalk. So again, with the Transportation Benefit District, trying to use that as a local match to get some community development block grant funds, because the area around College Avenue between Academy Way, Birch, Rose Street, and Sunny actually is deemed low moderate income by HUD. And then you can actually get community development block grant money to do projects. So you'll see here that in essence, all these projects are scheduled where, again, trying to tee up a block of road for a sidewalk on one side, construction, and then a block of road for engineering, and keep going along that. Next slide. College Place Post Office. This has been a major issue of the council and the mayor. So in this case, we ended up getting a state pedestrian and bike grant. So when this thing is done, this will probably be the safest like crosswalk in the whole valley, because when you get state money, you somewhat lose your ability to say what you're putting over there. So this is going to have some bump outs. There'll be a pedestrian bike counter, rapid flashing beacon, and then a gently raised crosswalk. Again, tying the fact that that'll be like the safest crosswalk probably in the valley. And with accepting this grant money, we have to move really quick because they time you on it. So it's being engineered right now, and by the end of next spring, this would need to be constructed. So this is going to be moving very quick. Next slide. Downtown parking lots. So I've mentioned this at past meetings, but one of the issues for development along College Avenue has been like the lack of parking and so forth at various intersections. So the city council passed the tax increment financing district, so we could pay to do these long awaited amenities. So right now we're in negotiations to try to acquire some land that is like hidden away. So the big issue with some of the parcels on College Avenue is they're really narrow and long, so you can't really fit parking in them well. So there's a couple of parcels that are in the middle of the large blocks, but then have easement access out to College Avenue. So we're actually looking at acquiring some property for shared public parking, because then we'd waive the parking requirement for future development, because then we'd have shared public parking lots. So we're working on getting appraisals right now for some properties. And these properties we're looking at don't have anything on them. They're like weeds and overgrowth. So it's basically trying to do stuff underutilized property. And the pink area delineated in the maps, that just shows the TIF area. And that helps to, and it's not an additional tax. All that is that you do a study that says, like, based on your ideal development over 25 years, what you believe the increment in additional taxes will be. And then off of like city current expense, the port, and then the library, any increment essentially can be used to pay for infrastructure to further those investments. It's used in every other state except here, but now we can. So this is a concept for that. Next slide. Then signalization of Stone Creek. So with that new development going in across from the high school, that's actually going to facilitate another east-west road to go across that property. And we'll be partnering with the developer, but that road's going to have to be a little oversized because the public school district bought land to the far southwest. And it looks like they eventually want to do some sort of intermediate school out there. So there is some exposure on that, which is why we have tax increment financing helping to pay for a portion of it. Next slide. The east-west road, this is, you can see the bottom part of that map. There's the road that goes from east to west and it would connect all the development together. So the developer is going to be building the majority of it. But again, since some of it has to be oversized for the eventual new school and then some potential commercial development, that's why we have tax increment financing paying for some of that. And we estimate that a lot of this would, at least putting in this, because a lot of the little roads would be built off of it, their expense years to come after that. That's why east-west road has to go in early. Next slide. Northeast active transportation project. We got a grant for this. So Northeast Damson from Cargill of Rose is going to be rebuilt. That's that portion that gets really narrow, as you can see in the picture. So it'll add sidewalk and then a rapid flashing beacon so folks can actually use the bus stop over there. And then we're actually getting some out of call grant money from the state to fix up roads between Cary Court and Lambert, because next year the city of Walla Walla is doing a road diet on their portion of Rose Street. So you'd have a situation where it would go from 3 lanes and bike lanes to 4 lanes, then to back to 3 lanes with the multi-use path. So instead, we're going to try and make it so it's like one fluid sequence between the 2 jurisdictions. Next slide. And then Public Works yard replacement, again, we're just starting to investigate this. So we're doing a facility study and then a couple of years out, trying to get grant money and make it happen. When the older generation worked in Public Works, you could have facilities that were very old, but now it's hard to retain folks because some of the buildings out there predate the city being incorporated, and it's actually converted chicken coops. The Public Works folks are working out of it, that yard under the water tower. Next slide. And then Auto Meadows, getting those roads up to city standard now that that subdivision adopted the local improvement district, so we could take it over as public roads. Next slide. And then Ash, we're doing a study on the other that will go on through 2024, figure out how maybe better reconfigure it with all the activity from the university and Davis School. Next slide. And then Lampertian College, we're trying to earmark some money to go put a guardrail up at Lampertian College Avenue, because over the years, through various accidents and then whether a number of vehicles have gone at or over the retaining wall over there, and we just had another one, so it's going to be a major issue. Next slide. And then Whitman Home Depot, this is a newer project, but Myra Road, we don't own Myra Road from Rose to State Route 125. The city of Walla Walla does. And there's a potential development once going on the property south of Home Depot, but it needs a right turn in and right turn out. And our neighboring jurisdiction is politely squeezing us a little bit on that. So we may need to look at alternate options. And one is to put a traffic circle in at that back entrance of Home Depot, because the problem is the entryway going to that property across from Home Depot right now is a pork chop, so it doesn't facilitate full movement. So this is a newer project, but we put it in because otherwise that deal could potentially go south. And really, unless we get some additional movement in there, getting development on that property is a challenge. So Next slide. Southeast Ninth, again, trying to program some transportation benefit district money and match it with CDBG money. This is the only unpaved road in the city, and it has like rock and dirt in it. So actually trying to put a paved surface in there. It's right off of College Avenue. Next slide. Then Garrison, Village Way, and Myra Road. We've been getting a lot of requests over the years, given the number of residents in the villages and folks trying to get to Fort Walla Walla Park to facilitate safer movement across Myra Road. So we're trying to work with our neighbors to get some grants and input a stoplight or something to facilitate safer movement around that area. So we have that in coming years, just because where it's at, it's a bit of a challenge to get grants for it. So, but nonetheless, we will try. Next slide. This one is important really recently. So it wasn't as important back when Homestead wasn't around in the county, didn't have that multi-use path going out to Whitman Mission. But now that it does, Whitman Drive's getting a ton of traffic, and that multi-use path is starting to be more and more important. So there's a 1.5 block portion that has no multi-use path, and then it's bordered by areas that do. So we did get a grant to do engineering and some right-of-way acquisition on Whitman between Davis and Academy Way, because half that block it just like ends and then there's nothing. So we're trying to position us so we could get additional grants to fill the gap and have a nice multi-use path the whole way from Myra and Fort Walla Walla to Whitman Mission. Next slide. And then Larch Wall, this would be positioned for 2025. We're working on this because a portion of the wall seems to have some medium-term integrity issues, so replacing the portion and city right of way. Next slide. Whitman Larch intersection is that property south of Whitman develops. We had a study done a couple of years ago that it would trigger essentially a stoplight or something at that intersection. So that's why we placed it as such. And then next slide. And then Whitman Drive improvements. When the south half of the roadway was improved, that was done at Hayden Homes expense, but then the north side was the old county chip seal, and it's starting to deteriorate. So trying to do a full scale replacement of everything a couple years out, and it may be bumped up as stuff happens out by Martin Airfield and also future grants. Next slide. And now we get into wastewater projects. Next slide. Wastewater treatment plants. So per our state permit, it has to dramatically be updated. So we end up getting a grant and loan offer where you can see the proportions, but a very expensive project, about $20 million. But we're getting earmark money for it, and then also state ecology hardship grant and loan dollars to get this thing done. So it'll be done over the next like 3 years. Next slide. This goes to my earlier comment. That same financing offering, the state bundled projects together so we could get them done in a timely manner, because a lot of these have been sitting on the shelf for a while. This one is dangerous for staff because when you have a lift station, you're supposed to have appropriate safety areas to get in there, and this one is in a coffee can contraption in a sidewalk. So, and we've had some injuries over there, so they'll replace this with a formal room to safely get down there. And that project will go next year and include new roadway and sidewalk. Next slide. And then also the state is part of a financing package. Every other year, we usually group sewer lining projects together to work on them because it's hard to get the contractors to want to come out here because if you have a limited amount, it's a challenge. Luckily, the state gave us money where we can do 10 years worth at one time. So we'll really be able to get nice and caught up. So they'll be going on next year as well. Next slide. And then last wastewater project, Central Avenue, a couple years out, but building a public wastewater line, because right now there's a private line that serves a bunch of homes that are failing. So working on doing a public line and then fixing the road as well. Next slide. Then getting into water projects. Next. The new well that I mentioned, because for all well projects we've been working on over the years, we recently only got to a number of wells that we had like 7 years ago. Meanwhile, development has occurred. So this would be the first additional well for additional capacity. We're drilling it right now and then again, the well house design basically next year and then starting to construct it next year into 2025. Next slide. West College Place water tower. We need a transmission main to get out there. So this will occur while we're doing Majania Road. So we don't have to rip it up again so we can take advantage of gravity and not have to build expensive pumps. The idea is to put the water tower out on some land at the wastewater treatment plant. So at least put the pipe in next year as we're doing Majania. Next slide. The College Place water tower. That water tower dates from the 1940s, and we need to do some additional reinforcement to seismically retrofit it and then repaint the exterior. The state finally found our grant agreement. They lost it for 5 years, but found it finally. So we'll be able to work on that. So that'll be going all through next year. Next slide. And then well 3, this one, well, we've depended upon a lot as we've been working through the various water crises over the last couple of years. All of our other wells now have electric generators. This one does not. So making sure we have a generator at this site, and we'll be going after some FEMA money for that. Next slide. And then this water tower, we're working on engineering for it, but the concept is to put the water tower out at the treatment plant. And that's going to be a split between a lot of different grants and resources because of the total expense of water towers. This one would be about 1 million gallons and about roughly $15 million. And not only is this for new development, but also to get our water capacity better. Because when we had some water issues last year, we learned that really with our water tanks, we have about 48 hours of storage and you're supposed to have 96. So we need to bump that up. Next slide. And then high water main replacement program. This is our water system plan. So you can see we're trying to do some work around Southwest 4th and 5th and 6th. And again, trying to position it where we engineer 1 year, construct it the next. And a lot of this we can do with utility funds. Next slide. And then medium priority water main replacement. This is as funds are available. And it's just some areas where they're starting to deteriorate, but not at a significant level, but we still need a plan for them. So around Lambert 8th and then Robin, and we have that program for water utility funds. And then next slide. And then that is a table of acronyms. So with that, that is the general list. Is there any comments or questions or thoughts?
Is everything in the PowerPoint part of the budget?
Yeah.
6-pager?
Yeah, so we have it on the website, and then what ultimately goes in the budget is there is a 5-page spreadsheet that just has the simplified portion, but then council likes to know where this stuff is at and what is it. So this is the detailed.
The 6-page PDF.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments? Good information, Mike. Thank you. Let's move on to our 2023 development update by Mr. Rizzatello, please.
Okay, thank you. Not much has changed from last month, but I just want to go over it since we have new members just to demonstrate what we do with the reporting. So every month we report on developments that are ongoing or ones that we are starting to essentially try to get to come into the city. And with some of them we can say who they are. The other ones we can't. So we give like a project to try to hide it. But if you see the name, you can usually connect to them too. So Chipotle, that is this one is going. They're open now. Project Inspire. This is the other tenant that's going to take the other half of the building. So that's another sandwich tenant that's going in adjacent to them. We're pretty excited about. Across the highway, by the end of the year, we should have Burger King that's going to be open, and that's going in right next to Aspen Dental. Then Project Bed. This is the Whitman and Myra project. This one is interesting. So if this comes to fruition, this would be a hotel and convention center that basically would rival Marcus Whitman Hotel. So we're really looking at that one.
Where is that located? Again?
Right behind the Home Depot.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Then Project I, this would be at Meadowbrook over by Hop Thief. That is another hotel that's looking at going in over there as well. This one I would say is less mature than the Project Bed over at Whitman and Myra. Project Red, this would be the commercial property across from the high school. We continue to talk with them. It's a developer, basically does some power centers and stuff where you have medium and big boxes. So they are looking at least at the frontage over there. Then next page, Project Wood. That is an outdoor shopping type center development, and they potentially are looking at going in if that Project Bed goes in. So it's almost like a stack of cards where if the hotel doesn't go, they won't go. So we're trying to monitor that. And then Project FM, still talking with them. They really want to start seeing the homes at Lakeside come out of the ground before they commit. So that seems to be the hesitation. And then Project C, that's another one. That is another one that's out there potentially for the site behind Home Depot, because this one was looking at going to Pasco. Pasco messed up the deal. And then there is a smaller one going at West Richland, but it's not filling the whole market. So they're potentially looking out here. Then the next one is Project Flight. This is Martin Airfield. And again, we're going to have the annexation hearing on that tomorrow. The good news to report to everyone, the airport is safe. So I know there is a lot of scuttlebutt out in the community where they're worried about the airport. It is safe and it's not being upsized for big jets or anything. It's basically so they can handle better the hobby planes because they're getting a lot of hobby planes over there. So that's what that is. Project Detroit. This one would be Meadowbrook area, and it's a car dealership. So seeing where that goes. And then Project Arches, we continue to talk with them. They are looking essentially over at areas along South College or Whitman or Myra, and then getting a residential. Residential Homestead, they are being a little cagey on what's going on at the last phase. So they basically sold the parcel to a subsidiary that does like smaller little homes, but we're trying to get a timeline, like what are they thinking, and we've not gotten that yet. Then beyond that, Villages of Fort Wallace, so that is the back third of that property behind Home Depot, so toward the back water tanks. That is a 180 unit apartment complex. And with that one, we have issued the grading permits. That's going to start coming out of the ground soon here. Then some other things, Sermon, he went to do some multifamily on Spitzenberg over by Wenzel Nursery. So we've permitted some of the buildings. We're just waiting for them to get going. Lakeside College Holdings, that's the former Craig Christensen property. We're going to have a preliminary plan meeting with them next week, but I believe we're going to start seeing forward movement on that. Then the next one's Villages at Garrison Creek, the donut hole in the middle of the Villages development. We have gone through their site plan, so they're ready to build. They just need to start. And that is approved for 70 single family homes, that donut hole in the Villages at Garrison Creek. Vesper, right over here at 8th and College. Construction continues on that. And that's going to be 24 units. Deer Meadows, that one is townhome and single family development. Basically, like if you drew a line, if Davis kept going to 12th Street, it would be out there. And that's permitted. We're just waiting to hear from the developer what the plan is for going. Then the last two, Martin Airfield. So they're having essentially the hearing tomorrow night. Not so much for annexation. We already had the hearing on that. This one is for the zoning because we have to zone it. So really it's a combination of light industrial for the north, which is what would allow airports. That would be the most similar zoning there. And then for the extreme south portion across the creek, likely single family residential. So we'll see what council thinks on that. And then the last one is Salerno Estates, and that's on Southwest 12th before you go out in the county. And that's got approved for basically 8 homes on like half-acre sites out there. So they're working on that. So as you can see, there's a lot of stuff going. So yeah. Questions, comments, thoughts?
So the roundabout,
Yeah.
I mean, you're seriously stymied until you get that project approved?
So I gotta be careful what I put out here on the Whitman and Myra one, but the issue is the investors behind the hotel are insistent that there be a right turn in, right turn out off of Myra, but we don't control Myra. City of Walla Walla controls Myra, so they can like grant whether or not that occur.
Right turn in.
And right turn out.
Okay, there's already out on tomorrow?
Well, there already is an entrance exit with Whitman and Myra, but
Right.
the investors with these hotel developments, they usually like an additional one on the main road going in, and they want to right turn in. Right,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, and they want to right turn in, right turn out, but see, we don't have the control on Myra Road. City of Walla Walla does, and that tends to be a little bit of the issue. So.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah. So if they don't grant that, one option is to do this like roundabout concept, because at least then you're getting full circular motions into that site. And unlike Myra Road, we control Whitman, so we could allow that. Myra Road is a whole other situation.
Any more questions or comments? Okay, well, our next meeting will be November 2nd, 5 p.m. And this time, do I have a motion to conclude our meeting?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Oh,
Aye.
Hi.
aye. All All right, if there's no objection, our meeting is now concluded. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.